Welcome to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. I am your host, Leah Lambart, career and interview coach and founder of Relaunch Me, where we help you find the work that you were meant to do. Welcome to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. Today, I am joined by a client who I met recently, Bianca Luscombe, who has had a significant career change from working in visual merchandising and retail to starting her own food business, Curiously Cauli, largely inspired by her own experience of being a type 1 diabetic from early childhood and her brother's diagnosis with celiac disease. Bianca was able to identify and respond to a gap in the market for high-quality alternative foods, which are gluten-free, have no added sugar, and are low allergen. She successfully launched Curiously Cauli in 2018, a dip and cracker range, which is now stocked in 3 states and is also exported to Singapore and Malaysia. Welcome to the podcast, Bianca. It's great to have you as a guest.
Hi, Leah. Thank you for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Bianca, when I first met you, I felt really inspired by your story. And I think what you've achieved is really incredible, particularly for someone who hasn't come from, a food tech or a food background. But I also felt that your story would really help and inspire other listeners. And I have had several clients over the years who would love to start their own product-based or food business, but really don't know where to start. So I thought I'd love to have you on the guest so you can tell us how you started your business and to share some of your learnings along the way.
Yeah, of course. So you sort of touched on earlier. So Curiously Cauli was largely inspired by me being a type 1 diabetic. So I was diagnosed when I was 6, and my brother being diagnosed with celiac disease. So I came from an Italian household. So put those two together, celiac and diabetic. Mum had quite a challenging time sort of preparing meals because typical Italian food consists of pasta, pizza, wheat. So she found it quite challenging. But I guess where Curiously Cauli came about was prior to starting the business, I worked in visual merchandising, and I did enjoy my time in that role. But I always, and there was predominantly fashion visual merchandising, but I always had this passion for cooking and nutrition. So I'd often find myself after work, coming home, cooking, and people would think, oh, are you crazy after a full day's work? Why would you be bothered cooking? How can you be bothered? But I really, really loved it. And I guess Curiously Cauli sort of came about when I was visual merchandising. I was doing long hours. It was very labor intensive. And as a result of that, my health sort of got neglected. And my diabetes. So my control of my diabetes went through a bit of a rough patch, I guess, because I was putting other things before at work and just sort of, not focusing on my health as much. So it was a bit of a wake-up call when that sort of happened. I went to the doctors and they were like, look, you really can't keep going on like this. So I sort of made a conscious effort then to focus more on my diet and the foods that work for my blood sugar levels. So with that, I obviously started eating more vegetables, low GI foods. And by the time I hit mid-20s, I was following a plant-based diet. So from following a plant-based diet, I saw what veggies worked for me, and one star vegetable that really worked from a nutritional point, but also for my diabetes control, was the humble cauliflower. So I sort of thought, I can get creative with this. And at the time overseas, there was a lot of things trending in the market, like kale was really popular and all that. And I kept seeing that there were these pizza bases being made overseas that are making cauliflower. And so, but why not give that a crack? I would substitute things that were normally high glycemic foods like rice, pasta, for things like cauli rice. Instead of mashed potato, I'd have mashed cauliflower, and sort of just incorporating it more in my diet to help stabilize my glucose levels. So that's how sort of my love for cauliflower sort of came about. And then from that, Curiously Cauli was born.
Yeah, look, I'm a massive lover of cauliflower. So, I think that's why I probably was particularly interested in your business, because I also have cauliflower rice and often get the cauliflower pizza base, which I didn't even know existed until maybe 2 years ago. You're obviously a great cook and you'd spend a lot of time trying different recipes and doing things like that. But still starting a business in food and actually manufacturing food products, that's still a whole different ball game. You didn't have a background working in food. So how did you even start out in terms of seeing whether your product was going to be something that you could make a business out of?
Yeah, so I didn't have a background with food, and so that was another thing. So I guess where it came from was I learnt a lot from my mum. Coming from an Italian family with a massive passion for cooking, my mum would always cook, and I'd always watch her sort of cook recipes. And like I said, when I was doing visual merchandising after work, I'd actually be excited to cook, come home, and I constantly read recipes and all that. And whilst I was doing that, I was also really interested in nutrition and improving my diabetes and getting it back to good control. So combine those two together, I became really passionate and really interested in food, but also the role foods play in your body. So I guess I sort of taught myself. I taught myself about how foods interact, at this stage, I'd also cut out gluten out of my life, even though I wasn't diagnosed with celiac disease or anything. Diabetes and celiac sort of run in the same gene. And so I made an effort to sort of not eat as much of those processed foods. So I guess to answer your question, I just learnt on the spot how to cook, how to sort of do how sort of different foods interact with each other. I did a lot of research as well on cauliflower because I thought, well, it's very versatile, but at the same time, it's actually providing more nutritional benefits than any other vegetable I've come across. And I sort of thought, everyone loves potato. But for me, potato automatically spikes your glucose levels. And yes, in moderation, it's fine. But cauliflower, I thought, why couldn't it be? It's never going to be the potato, but why can't it be as popular as a potato? It can be cooked, mashed, and all these, riced, and, obviously turned into a cracker and dip range. So I guess I just kept doing a lot of R&D out of my own little kitchen at the time. So that's how it sort of started, all in the humble kitchen. All at home, yes, all at home. And, God, I wouldn't have people over because I don't know if you know, but cauliflower can smell, when you're cooking it. It can give off a gassy smell because of the sulfites in it. And so I was like to my partner, we can't have people over at the moment until I do a massive cleanse of the house. But, so it all started at home. And it actually it's quite a funny story because as I mentioned earlier, I was seeing overseas the whole pizza-based trend sort of happening in the US. And I thought, why can't I, make my own pizza bases here that don't have gluten in them, but are also vegan friendly? Because a lot of the ones overseas did still contain dairy or eggs or sort of those binding things. So I thought, why not start with the pizza base? Because it seemed to be getting a lot of traction over there. So I started making the pizza bases at home, and let me tell you, they were a complete disaster. So here I was blending cauliflower, there's bits and pieces flying everywhere. And so I had gone through every option. There was one last option. I thought, why not put this cauliflower pizza crust in the sandwich press, and maybe that might cook it better. So I put it in the sandwich press, and now it did not come out a pizza, but a cracker. And I thought, oh, wow, it's not the pizza, but it's actually cooked really well. It's a cracker and it tastes delicious. So that's where the whole idea of a snack food cracker came about, just by default. So, and this probably sounds quite hilarious now that I think about it, but so I was making these crackers because I found them really good for me to snack on. And like I said, when I was working in visual merchandising, I did neglect my health and I would just eat crappy snacks all the time. Whereas taking my own crackers and eating them kept me fuller for longer. They were giving me veggies and they were a bit lower on the glycemic index, which is great for me as a diabetic, as opposed to some of the snacks that I would have in between meals and stuff. So I started making them, sharing them with friends and family, and I got a really great response. And so I have to really thank my partner because he was the one that saw what I was doing and thought, she's a bit crazy, but then also thought, this could actually be something. And he encouraged me, why don't go to a market and test it out? So I thought, well, why not? I've got nothing to lose. So started doing a couple of local markets, had to get all the kitchen registered, all the local council, which is full on, and thought, let's just sell it at a couple of markets. I also participated in the JDRF Walk for a Cure. I approached them and they sort of said, look, we'd love to have you on board and have a stand at our Walk for a Cure, which is a big fundraising event that's held each year by JDRF to raise funds for a cure for type 1 diabetes. So we actually took part in that, and it was just great just to see mums with kids coming by. Oh, we love your product. It's so great to see. And not only just diabetics, but when I would do the farmers markets, just people we started to eventually get repeat buyers. And that's when you know your product is going well, that repeat customer, because everyone will buy things one off. They're interested, it's a bit unusual cauliflower. But when you get that repeat customer, it really says there's some brand loyalty and then they really like your product. So I found that really reassuring and thought, that's great. And they'd continue to come each week. And so it got to a point where I had outgrown my little kitchen, and we sort of thought, oh God, so what do we do here? So we actually looked at all options. We looked at options of, do we outsource, which is get a contract manufacturer, or do we get our own facility, buy equipment, have more control? And we weighed up both options, and there was more risk, more financial risk, and a lot more involved with setting up your own place in terms of legalities, HACCP, getting it all audited and all that. So for us, it suited our business to outsource and contract manufacture. So I researched a lot of manufacturers within Melbourne that did specialise in gluten-free products, and came across a company that were able to produce our crackers, who were also gluten and allergen friendly, and we started working with them. So that's how it sort of started, from small, humble beginnings to contract manufacturing. But it was challenging, and and the hardest thing for me is that I've always wanted to stay true to why I started the business. And the biggest thing for me was my recipe. And creating something from your own kitchen is one thing, but when you have to upscale and make it commercially viable, it's completely different. So I really struggled with trying to stay true to my recipe, but yet also make a cracker that is commercially viable, that can be made at a larger scale. And so that was one of the challenging things. So I'd be working with the food technologists every day. Just, can we do this? Can we do it? I don't want to add these things. I don't want to add preservatives. I don't want to add emulsion. I just don't want to add things that are not what I'm about and not what Curiously Cauli is about. So we actually came to a really good result where I was able to keep pretty much my whole recipe, and I had to tweak a couple of things to get it to run through the bigger sandwich press, I will say. I was doing it all the time, like out of my little sandwich press, but, to get it made. So, yeah, that's one challenge is, you think, you've got a great product in your kitchen, but when you go to making thousands and that, your recipe will change slightly. If you can keep it as true to what it originally is, then that's a huge success.
Yeah, I've just learned so much just from what you've said in the last 10 minutes. Can I go back and just ask you a few questions? But you mentioned having to get your kitchen registered and to go through council. Can you just explain what that process is and, what they require of you to make it a commercial kitchen?
Yeah, so it can be a bit of a lengthy process. So basically you have to, whatever council you're in, you have to, I guess, have a food permit. That's what it's called. And it varies in each state as well. So for Victoria, you have to go through the process of registering your kitchen with the council. They'll then have an inspector come out and check the kitchen, and you have to obviously declare what you're going to be making there, what foods, the conditions. And so they'll basically do an audit of your kitchen and then come back to you whether they think it's suitable enough or whether you have to make it elsewhere in somewhere because there are commercial kitchens available that obviously tick all those boxes, and they have audits every couple of months, and there and all that. I also for my own benefit, and I would suggest if you are doing a food business, is that you do need a food safety certificate. So there's courses you can do, food safety, and just to know, have a HACCP plan. These are the two major things that obviously councils or anyone running a business, they or getting audited, do require. So even just for your own, I mean, I did learn so much in the food safety course, but it's a food supervising course and hygiene and safety practices. So those two things are just really great to have, and are probably these days. I mean, back then it was not compulsory, but I'd imagine it is now. Yeah, so ticking off those things, and then once you know, if you do get approved, it's then you have, I guess, a supervisor come and check it every couple of months, or once a month, and make sure you're on top of things, and just having everything sort of a HACCP plan in place, and all the hygiene boxes ticked. So yeah, there is obviously fees to get it registered as well, and there's also another application you have to go through, which is street trader. So if you want to trade at a farmer's market, you have to have a street trader account, which is just set up online, and basically you have your HACCP kitchen certified through them as well, and then you put in each week what market you're going to go in. Another thing is obviously liability insurance as well. So when you trade at a farmer's market, you need to make sure you have that all as well. So there is a little bit in it, but it can be a lengthy process, but usually it's quite simple, and it's just waiting for the approval that's the hardest bit. And once you're approved, away you go. You can start making your food. So yeah.
Right. So to start selling at a market, you would need all of that in place.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
What I love about your story is when I speak to people about starting a business, I always talk to them about designing little career experiments to test things out, starting, from something that's really small, inexpensive, and then slowly building up. And you pretty much went through exactly that process. So first of all, I guess making the products for yourself. Then next step, making it for friends and family, getting their feedback, seeing if they thought it was a good product. Then next step, the market, before obviously then, getting in touch with a food manufacturer and taking it to that next level. So it's a really interesting process, isn't it? It's sort of testing to see, I guess, whether it's something you want to do, as well as if the product's going to work in the market.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing I would suggest is farmers markets are a great form of market research, because you're going to get customers that tell you then and there, if they like the product. So we found that a really great way to do market research. Is there a demand? Do we have repeat customers? We'd have, and this was obviously prior COVID coming, but we would do things like product sampling, taste testing, where then and there people would taste and give you their feedback, what they thought. And I would use it as a way to get as much information as possible, what we can improve in, what they thought, product or, price point, all that. So it was a really great way to do market research. So yeah, definitely, I would definitely suggest to do as much research as you can before you jump in and do it, because you need to really know your customers as well, and if there is a market for it.
And what about, this is, I guess, is something that goes along with the food, but what about even packaging before you go to the farmers markets? I assume you have to, present the cracker in some sort of packaging, and I imagine there's quite an expense with that. Like, was that done through? Well, that's before you worked with the food manufacturer. So how did you manage that?
So our very first packaging for farmers markets was not glamorous at all. We were making it all in our commercial kitchen. So we were putting it in flowback pocket pouches with stickers, really, and just selling the crackers there and there. When we got to the manufacturing stage, that's when we were like, okay, obviously this is going to sit on a shelf because we want to get it into retail stores. So it has to look good. And with retail at the moment, as you probably know, there is so much. It is such a flooded space. There's so many colours, so many things happening. And I guess drawing back to my years of visual merchandising, I learnt how important it is for your product to be visually appealing. So for me, I wanted because we were cauliflower and because people hadn't heard of us before, our branding was something that was really, we wanted to be different and stand out. So that's where we sort of went with the floating collies, because we thought that's a bit different, a bit abstract, but they're the floating collies. And so people, and this is quite funny because people often know our brand as the floating collies, not so much our logo, but they know us as, oh, you're the packaging with the floating collies. So that was and also with our packaging, we also tried to not do what everyone else was doing in terms of the bright colours, because whilst they look great, there was just so many people, so many bright colours on a shelf. So we actually went for a more paler, sort of neutral, so that we didn't just look like another bright colour with all these, claims being read out to you. We went with the subtle collies, and we found that really worked for us.
You're obviously a creative person with your visual merchandising background. Did you find the branding and the marketing, did you find that part came very naturally to you, or did you get some assistance with that, outside of you and your partner?
No, look, I loved the branding, the marketing. Obviously, that's sort of my back. Not that I was marketing so much, but the visual appeal and creating a story behind a brand. I love that part of it. But I also did work with a design team as well in Melbourne, and she's actually a freelance designer who was fantastic. She and that's another thing, we actually went to a design team before meeting up with our designer that's designing our range now. And they were a bigger agency, but they weren't sort of getting the feel that I wanted behind the brand. So I remember pitching to them what I sort of envisioned, and they came back to me with the bright colours and all this and that. And I was just like, oh, and that was hard because I was like, oh, I don't want to, at that stage, I was like, it's an opportunity, I don't want to say no. And Farran was like, my partner, he was like, well, if you're not happy with it, you can't just say yes because you're worried about. And that was hard because we did spend money on, obviously, their consulting and that. But I was like, it's just not what our brand's about. We're not a brand that's sitting in the mainstream aisle. We're Curiously Cauli. We've got a story. We're authentic. And so it was a bit of a hard decision, but we decided to part ways with that design agency. And then I found someone else just by doing my own research who really, I sat down with her. She really got what I was about, really invested her time in the brand and was really keen to work with us. And that's how we sort of worked together with what we wanted on the brand, on the packaging, and how we wanted it to be displayed and what message we were trying to send to the customers.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story as well, because I think to market your product and to get out there, you've got to love your brand, don't you? You have to be, has to be authentic to you. So once you've worked with the manufacturer, you've worked with the food tech, you've got your product and your packaging ready, how did you then go about getting your products into stores?
So we thought we'd put the feelers out earlier because we wanted to make sure that we had people that were going to buy it if we were going to make it at this commercial level. There's one thing, and I I'm sure we would have been able to sell through stock at the farmers market, but we were producing a larger quantity. So we wanted to make sure that we had stores interested. We did get approached by a couple of distributors, which was great at early days, and that was just to distribute in Melbourne. And so we did work with a distributor early days, and they sort of act as, I guess, the middleman between you and the buyer at the store. And they got us into a bunch of stores in Melbourne, which was really great. But distributors, they're great for getting your brand off the ground. And I would recommend, if you're starting out, definitely go through a distributor because they have buying power, they have connections. They're a great way to get your foot in the door in a market, and especially interstate where you can't be there doing it. But what we did find over time is my partner, Farran, he was sort of doing work a bit, will cut down his hours at work, and he was sort of investing more time into the business. And he sort of said to me, I've gone into 2 stores the other day and saw that this wasn't replenished and that, I was doing it. And he sort of said, I could be doing this myself. We're paying, and obviously distributors take their cut. We're working in fast moving consumer goods. You work on skinny margins. I will say that. So, obviously distributor will take their percentage, the store will take their cut, and then you've got to work with what you've got, and then, freight and all that. So we were like, well, if you're cutting down your hours, then why don't you go into stores and be the foot soldier and get the product out there? And I tell you what, he has done the most amazing job. So then we decided, look, we're not going to need this distributor anymore because my partner can go out and do all this. So he was pretty much acting as a rep. And in that time, he had got us into 100 stores just by going in there. And so I guess both me and him have different strengths, and mine's the creative, the recipe development, the marketing and all that. Nora's, he plays the role of the sales, the distributor, and I don't have that strength. Like, I remember trying to go to a store and be, with my box of collie crackers, and I was very nervous and like, do you want to take Nora's? He had that go, and so pretty much we started distributing our own brand in Victoria and dealing directly with stores. And we built a really great relationship with a lot of managers, which is really important when you've got a food business as well. Managers love to meet the owners and just, meet the people behind the brand. So, yeah, Farran did an amazing job at getting us into stores. And to this day, he still keeps in contact. He has managers messaging him, he's even had other companies approach him about maybe doing some sales for him. But he lives and breathes it, whereas I'm not that salesperson. And that's the thing. With business, you've got to focus on your strengths and put time and energy into the areas of the business that are important and what is going to improve the longevity of the business. So, yeah, I feel like he plays his role really well, and I obviously play my role. And then we've obviously got a team behind us through outsourcing that can produce the product.
Yeah, great advice. I mean, I think it's really important, particularly going into business with a partner. You have to complement each other's skills. You can't both be good at sales or both be good at the behind the scenes. You've got to complement each other. So you're lucky that it worked out that way.
Oh, yeah. Look, a lot of people, and I remember saying this to my friends, like, who are you doing the business with? And I said, well, Farran. And they're like, are you crazy? And it's, yeah. And look, it's not for everyone, but I honestly couldn't imagine doing business with anyone else. And it's so important to surround yourself with the right people who share the same passion in the business. And that's one thing I've learned, like, you've got to surround yourself with people that are passionate.
Bianca, it's been, I'm sure, a challenge from, day one and a huge learning curve. What would your biggest learnings be along the way other than what you've already shared?
Oh, wow. Well, I've learned so much. I feel like I've done a degree in the last 4 years, but one of the biggest is you've got to be a problem solver in running your own business, because every day almost there's always problems, but you need to find a solution, and businesses are about finding a solution. So that's one of the biggest things I've learned, is that you're going to get problems and challenges along the way, but it's about finding the solution. So you've got to be able to think quickly, like, if something goes wrong, how do we solve that? Or if, we're down stock because someone's put the wrong ingredient in, so we've had to throw out that batch, what do we do? Like, you've just got to think on the spot and think of solutions. So that's one thing I've really, really learned from it. And you've got to be patient. So business takes time, and we've still got challenges ahead of us and everything, but you've just got to be patient with things and not rush things. A lot of people feel like, oh my God, I've got to get there, I've got to get, first to market, got to do this, but you've got to really slow it down, because when you rush things, mistakes are made, and businesses don't just become successful overnight. It takes a lot of time, a lot of hard work.
Yes, excellent advice. And I think that's a great learning. The market research is important, whether it's a service-based business, a product-based business, doing these little experiments along the way to test the market, but also to test if you actually get enjoyment and energy from doing that type of work. Small business isn't for everyone, is it?
No, definitely not. No. And passion is so important. If you don't love what you're doing and you don't get up and excited to do what you do every day, then business will be hard. You've got to live and breathe it, and you've got to love it.
One last question, Bianca. How can people find your delicious dips and crackers? And I have sampled them, and they are very yummy, particularly for my daughter has a couple of friends who are gluten intolerant. So they are gluten intolerant, aren't they?
Yes, no, absolutely. So they're all allergen friendly. So we're clear of nuts, clear of all the main allergens, and definitely gluten free, and made with fresh cauliflower. We use all grade 2 cauliflower. So all our products are made with cauliflower puree as opposed to powders. So we use fresh puree in all our products. So yeah, to answer your question, look, we are stocked in a bunch of stores in Victoria. So if you head to our website at www.curiouslycauli.com.au, we have a list of all our stockists there. We also deliver nationwide. So we deliver our products, our crackers, ambient. We're still working on the dips because obviously chilled's another issue with logistics, but we are available nationwide. And we've got our Instagram page. So Instagram, we sort of put up, recipes, ideas, and how you can use our crackers, and Facebook. So and they're all obviously the links to them are all on the website. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, look, I will put those links in the show notes as well. So go out, grab yourself some lovely dips and crackers, and support Bianca's fantastic business. Bianca, it's been fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing so much of your story, because I think I could ask you questions for another half hour, but you've already, I've learned a lot from talking to you. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Relaunch Your Career. If you did, please subscribe, share with your friends, leave a review, or connect with us on social media at Relaunch Me Career Consulting. If you have any questions about the episode or the work that we do, then contact us via the website relaunchme.com.au. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.